hear me in the back? How about anybody hear me in the back? Let's go up a little bit. Hey, Isabel, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me in the back? I don't know if they can hear me. Hey, Mark, can you go in the back and tell me if you can hear me?
I'm so big now.
Hey, Mark, do we need to go up, do you think? Go up? Up more? That's perfect. Thank you. Thanks. And you can mute me. Oh, you muted me, right? Yeah. Welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. My name is Reverend Ian Whitemar. It's good to see you all. To everyone who's watching us online, great to have you with us. Always a joy. Yeah, let's wave to them. Hey, everybody. Hey. If you're new, if this is your first time or you've just been, maybe you've come a couple times, I'll be out in coffee hour after service. It's one of our great sacraments. So please come, say hi. I'd love to meet you. Just tell you a little bit about our congregation. Normally, this is the time when I would have our list of announcements, but instead, today we have kind of an important announcement. So I'm going to recommend that you look at your newsletter list of announcements so that we can hear from Catherine Tobin, our Vice Chair of the Board.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning to all of you out there online participating today. I'm Catherine Tobin and a member of the Board of Trustees. It's important for you, community members, to know two things. First, unfortunately, on the day before Thanksgiving, the board received news that the Fort Hunt Preschool filed a complaint against Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. It concerns the terms for their 10-year lease with the church and their claim that various repairs to the property have not been made. I won't go into details here, but the second thing you should know is that our chairman immediately called a special meeting of the board. We convened a week ago to lay out the church's plan to respond, which is underway, and to commit to a communication plan to keep you, the community, well informed as this takes place over time. In a few days, all of us will receive a letter explaining the situation in more detail, although the board is fully aware we've worked on aspects of this over the last months. But we'll also keep you informed via the regular MVUC news postings and in other meetings. Legal matters can take time, so stay tuned. You should know that we have legal expertise serving us, and the core of the issue is a legal judgment on Virginia law regarding tenant status. Thank you for your attention, and look for more details this week. Now let's worship together. Thank you.
Testing. Testing. Jolly old St. Nicholas, lean your ear this way. Don't you tell a single soul I'm going to say Christmas Eve is coming soon. Now, you dear old man, whisper what you'll bring to me. Tell me if you can.
When the clock is striking 12, when I'm fast asleep,
Down the chimney, broad and black, with your crack you'll creep.
all the stockings you will find hanging in a row. Mine will be the shortest one. You'll be sure to know. You will be sure to know. Sure to know. Dear old Santa will be sure to know. Susie wants a sled.
Nellie wants a picture book.
Yellow, blue, and red.
Now I think I'll leave to you what to give the rest. Choose for me, dear Santa Claus. You will know the best.
Jolly old Saint Nicholas, lean your ear this way. Don't you tell a single soul what I'm going to say.
what I'm going to
Going
say.
to say.
Oh, Christmas Eve is
Coming soon. Now you dear old man,
whisper what you'll bring to me.
jolly old Saint Nicholas.
Lean your ear this way.
Whisper what you'll bring to me.
Tell me if you
Advent, Adventus, means waiting. This is from the first Sunday of Advent by David Breeden. We light the chalice this holiday season, this time of waiting, to remind ourselves to enjoy the moment, the now of our lives. Much is coming, but we appreciate the opportunity to experience expectation without rushing ahead. The lighting of the first candle of Advent reminds us to be patient. In this holiday season, may we find the patience to forgive ourselves, to forgive those who do not do as we wish. May we find patience. May we find the wisdom to let be. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing number 224. That's 224. Let Christmas Come.
Days are short and winds are cold.
in the back of the hymnal. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest for truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all.
I am learning my humans, just like I had to learn my letters and numbers, almost exactly like the way I came to know my shapes and colors. I'm a little embarrassed. Actually, quite a lot embarrassed, and must use a great deal of restraint not to be swallowed by shame when I tell you how far behind I had been on learning my humans. Until a couple of years ago, I actually walked around very confident that I had a great insight into how my fellow humans functioned. I thought I had a good grasp on understanding what people thought, how they felt, what they wanted and needed. I didn't stop there, especially for those closest to me. I usually had a couple of theories lying around to explain their whys. And I usually was quite confident about it. I would be cringing a little less now if that's where I stopped. But no, there was more. I also believed that I knew exactly what was best for them and what they needed to do next, after that next, and a few more next after that. My confidence was not baseless. I did put in the work, a lifetime spent carefully observing and analyzing my fellow humans ought to have counted for something. But there was a fundamental flaw in my process, unknown to me. I had faulty data that was corrupted, distorted, and infected with background noise, data that had led me to a false sense of accuracy and a false conclusion. This also meant that I really did not have a good grasp on how this world functioned, though I had assumed I was proficient in this area as well, since I had a varying range of life experiences, along with a natural curiosity and hunger for knowledge. That is where life found me in the months leading to my 40th birthday, tightly wrapped in my faulty sense of accuracy about my understandings of myself, others, in life, while feeling like a helpless, lost child, patiently waiting for the years to pass in order to earn a place in that promised land of adulthood where empowerment and freedom awaited. But now, faced with an undeniable proof of the time having passed without the promised reliefs of adulthood in sight, this was the opening that unraveled me and pierced through my basic assumptions. It started with myself. I clearly remember the day my therapist said, "So you were the compliant one," after I shared an event from my childhood. What? What was she talking about? No, I was the rebellious one. I wasn't a yes person. I had my own mind. Remember all those times I got in trouble? Like the time I shaved the back of my head without permission in 7th grade? What about the countless times and ways I was told I was difficult? I had an understanding of what it meant to be compliant that I wanted no part in. I argued with my therapist until I clearly came to see my misconceptions and began to understand myself, my actions, and my relationships in a new light. This new light was harsh. It forced me to see how much I did not actually know my humans, not even the ones I had carefully observed and studied for decades close up. This new light exposed me to the existence of a frightening darkness that humans can harbor within. For me, this face-off with the darkness came when I learned to recognize the toxic dynamics in my primary relationships. I had been suffering through a horrifying experience which had a name, a formula, and had been carefully and intentionally designed all along The person whose happiness, comfort, healing, and success I poured my all into was on the other end, squeezing everything out of me while making me feel like I was a tolerable nuisance who needed to work even harder to hold on to the distorted version of love I had grown to accept. And while I cried rivers in pain, there was joy to be found in my suffering. That last part, was the powerful missing piece from my human learning data set. The source of my noisy, corrupted, and distorted data. The reason behind the fundamental flaw in my human understanding process. Since this primary disorienting revelation, I've come to learn so much more about my humans. Many more of my assumptions about human nature have been flipped on their heads. The most difficult part of this journey has been trying to figure out why I was so blind, and also to forgive myself for not having known what I now know much sooner. On days my life feels poetic, I think about one of my new favorite poems, What You Missed That Day You Were Absent from 4th grade, where the writer lists lessons like how to find meaning in pumping gas, how to not to feel lost in the dark, and how to believe the house you wake in is your home, among other key life lessons that were covered that day. I tell myself, that's it. That's what happened. I must have missed that all-important day my peers learned about their humans. On other days, I pathologize myself and life for the how and why, end up feeling so damaged. While on others, I dig deep to find beautiful spiritual lessons and make it all make sense. But no matter how deep I study it all, no matter how many insightful explanations I can come up with, I am unable to erase my new awareness and its implications. Can I still remain the open person I believe myself to be? Can I hold on to my core values of empathy and care? And most importantly, can I continue to love humanity the way I used to? Though I may waver slightly at times, I do know the answer. I am determined to find a way.
Thank you, Nardos. The youth can go to their classes if they like, and the rest of you can stay seated. We're going to sing Ubi Caritas. Do you want to guide them through this one time, Mark? Great, thank you.
This not being a jazz number, but a beautiful plain song chant. Where charity and love abound, God is there. So we just repeat the chant. Sounds like this first.
We come now to the morning offering. This month, MVUC is sharing the plate with United Community. United Community is a more than 50-year-old nonprofit offering an array of human services that lifts families in Fairfax County out of poverty. Their mission is to build thriving communities and create equitable opportunities by providing supportive services and advancing community-driven solutions. Their important work is in the areas of addressing food insecurity, early childhood development and education, and connecting families and individuals with essential resources. I invite you to contribute whatever you're most comfortable with to United Community and to this church community. We're grateful for your donation. During the offering, you're welcome to come forward in silence to light a candle of joy or sorrow. And now, will the ushers please come forward for the morning offering?
Continue our contemplative space, inviting the wisdom of Advent to come on us. The season is leading us also towards the solstice, the darkest night of the year. May we invite the darkness to come in a holy way, allowing us to rest, experience patience, perhaps understand the darkness of the seed in the soil, waiting for new growth. Let us allow calm to sweep over us, even as the outside culture might be winding us up. I was sort of chuckling to myself just the other day because I realized that for Advent today, first day of Advent, and also for Hanukkah next week, sort of the third beginning of Hanukkah, I have two Buddhist sermons coming at you. So you hire a Buddhist, and some of what you get. But there's a lot of conversation about whether Buddhism is a philosophy or a religion. And I believe that the Buddha understand his teaching to be spiritual in nature. So I come down on the religious side of the conversation, but I can understand why people think of it as a philosophy, right? The Buddha and the centuries of devotees who followed him spent their lives in deep meditative states that allowed them to discern with incredible nuance the motivations of human behavior. I loved that line from Nardos, like, I am learning my humans, right? Which often begins with us, right? I am learning my humans. And they sat in meditation so much to learn their humans. And in doing so, they created these fantastic methodological systems for evaluating their practice. Now, many of you have probably heard of the Four Noble Truths, right? That foundational teaching of the Buddha. Life involves suffering. There is a cause to suffering. There is an end to suffering. And there is a path of spiritual cultivation that brings about this end of suffering. And when you begin to study Buddhism, you learn that that path, the one that brings about the end of suffering, is called the Eightfold Path. But as you dive further, you encounter more of these lists, right? The 3 marks of existence, the 5 aggregates, the 5 hindrances, the 6 perfections. And this is because the insights are so logically organized that I think this is why a lot of people treat Buddhism like a philosophy. It's just so laid out in all of these lists. But in my opinion and experience, the encounter with insight is not just a grasping of the mind, right? But an experience of profound intimacy with existence. Now, sometimes this is called awakening to your true self, or more commonly, you've probably heard it referred to as enlightenment. But these lists, cognitive as they are, can be very helpful because through meditation, you are learning how to discern the nature of your consciousness. And you're able to see, for example, if you are being seduced by the 3 poisons, greed, hatred, and ignorance, which hopefully allows you the opportunity to cultivate the 3 wholesome qualities: wisdom, generosity, and loving kindness. Truly, the Buddhists love their lists, right? There are pages of them. There's like big maps of them. It's a spiritual system that works very well for people who like to follow a method. And I happen to be one of those people, so that's, I think, one of the reasons I have found Buddhism so useful and tender in my life. And if you're this type of person, I would really recommend a meditation practice. Initially, sometimes this can feel like a burden, like who has time for one more thing in their life, right? And I think if it's thought of that way, like adding something, it can feel like a burden. But if you make an effort and you're working with someone as a guide, you're able to take this time to discern your motivations of behavior and also see why we're all kind of fumbling through this life best as we can. And that can be incredibly liberating. Now, I personally study in a Zen tradition, a Mahayana tradition, and in this tradition, there is a list called the 6 paramitas, or the 6 perfections that are defining of the path of awakening or enlightenment. And that is the experience of profound intimacy. That's the way I refer to it, because I feel like enlightenment ends up being this sort of box that people talk about. But for me, it's intimacy with life, right? So when you have this intimacy with life, it's marked by these 6 qualities, and they are generosity, ethics, patience, perseverance, concentration, and wisdom. Now, the teaching asserts that each of us actually already has these perfect qualities. You already have all of them. But they end up being covered over by hindrances. They end up being covered over by greed, selfishness, delusion, and karmic tendencies. So it's not that we have to learn how
how to be generous. We're actually already generous. That's our nature, is generous. But because we don't understand ourselves, our true selves, we act in selfish ways. So selfishness is not actually a quality we have. People act selfishly because we don't understand who we really are. By seeing our true self, by encountering our true self, which, according to Buddhist teaching, we will come to understand that we are completely interwoven with all of existence. People who understand that they are completely interwoven with all of existence have no need to act selfishly because they don't feel separate. Selfishness and greed are derivatives of believing that you are separate and therefore you don't have enough and therefore you need to hoard. Right? The desire to hoard comes from feeling separate. Like there won't be someone to help. But you are not separate. You're not. Now, it is true that just as a human being, we live with a sense of separation. It's kind of part of the human experience, which is why we do all of these spiritual practices regardless of tradition. It's why we are, as a species, religious. Because we're trying to wrestle with this sense of separation. And we've articulated it in all of these different ways, which we call religions. And it's why we do the spiritual practices, to awaken to our true nature, that life is interwoven. So if we all have these qualities, these 6 perfections, generosity, ethics, patience, perseverance, concentration, and wisdom, we cultivate our understanding of them by removing the defilements that cover them up. And we do this through our daily habits and actions. And it starts with recognizing that these defilements didn't come from some other place or are somehow part of your character or your nature, right? You're not a sinner because someone ate an apple. It's not an inheritance. I'm sorry. The reason we're greedy is because we are greedy. That's the unfortunate part of responsibility, right? But also the liberative part, right? Because now it's not somebody in the past, like, okay, I did this and I can work on it. If we encounter the hindrances in our lives, it's because we've created them, not someone else. And this is why it's up to us to do the work for cultivating a spiritual life. And I say this with all, this morning it happened, right? This morning I'm driving, and I was not watching the clock so carefully. And so I was like, oh my God, I got to get there. I'm a little bit late. Or later than I like to be here. And so I'm starting to pull out of my little complex, and there was a car in front of me who was driving very, it was peculiar, the way that they were driving. And out of my mouth came, what are they doing? Now, fortunately, right, an accusation. Fortunately, I had just practiced the sermon. And I was able to compost the accusation into a curiosity. And what are they doing, as an accusation became, oh, what are they doing? And then I could see, oh, there are these sticks in the road, right? Maybe they're trying to avoid, because it was raining and some stuff fell out of the trees. Maybe they're trying to avoid them. I just drove over them because whatever, right? But, other people do different things differently than me, so they did things differently. And then there came an even more generous thought, which was, maybe they're just thinking about somebody else that they really care about, and they're not so focused. It became an opportunity to just be curious in the moment. Right? If we're going to experience the interwovenness with life, which puts us beyond the suffering we experience when we feel selfish, we have to cultivate daily habits through discipline, practice, and a sincere willingness to want to experience life. And we do this not only for our well-being, but because the experience of interwovenness awakens our hearts to unconditional love and compassion, right? I could have driven here this morning pissed off. Because what is that guy doing? That could have been my experience this morning. Instead, it became, oh, there's something else going on. And my ride was much better. And, probably also had an impact on how I was relating to other cars on the road, which meant their lives were better. Now, so when I say that, this awakening to the unconditional love and compassion, I often shorthand this by saying what we're really trying to do with this life, what we're trying to do at church, here anyway, is we are trying to fall in love with the world. How do we fall in love? Not just like awaken, but how do we fall in love? Because the world needs it from us, and we need it from the world. There is a reason why generosity is the first paramita, right, or the first perfection on the list. Generosity comes from a profound sense of belonging. It comes from believing in our interconnected nature. Right? The Sanskrit word is dana, which means voluntarily giving material, time, or wisdom. And cultivating a practice of dana helps us overcome our self-centeredness because we are cultivating an understanding of ourselves as giving people, as generous people. And because Buddhism is so nuanced, the texts are very clear that the perfection of generosity is not actually the action or the act of giving, but the perfection of generosity of the dana paramita is the intention, right? Our intention is important because there are lots of people who give with the idea of getting in return. Embedded in their giving, embedded in their generosity, is a desire for, reciprocity or even reward. Right? But dana is not concerned with who is worthy and who is not worthy. Will I get something or will I not? It is the cultivation of giving for the perfection of generosity so we can just be generous people, right? Now, some of you are familiar with the fact that I used to host a Buddhist podcast, and I used to interview teachers from different traditions about the nature of teaching. And one of those conversations that there are like 4 or 5 that have just stuck with me. They sort of remain as like these constellations in my life. And one of these conversations was with an American Buddhist nun who trained in Japan, and she talked about how her practice to become a nun was to go, part of her practice was to go begging for food and other support, right, with a begging bowl. And she explained that here in the United States, we interpret this act as a practice that might cultivate humility in the monastic. But Buddhist cultures have a different concept of generosity, and what she was actually doing was giving the people who were putting food and other material in the bowl the opportunity to practice generosity. Right? So from a cultural standpoint, we see putting food in the bowl as charity. From the Buddhist perspective, it is the opportunity to spiritually confront the selfishness that we're living with on a daily basis. People are not helping the nun by putting food in the bowl. The nun is helping the people become more generous, which ultimately means they suffer less because generous people suffer less attachment. The nun goes begging to help the people suffer less. Right? It's not charity. Generosity is the cure for the afflictions of greed, cruelty, and possessiveness. Now, we can see the truth of this in our own culture, right? Even though it's not described this way. How many people have ever mentored somebody? Right? A lot of you. And you can understand how it would be an entirely different relationship if that person had to pay you for your wisdom. Such a different relationship. As a mentor, you might even believe that you received as much or more from the relationship than the person you were mentoring. And it feels counterintuitive in a culture that's telling us to go for self. But what you're experiencing, even though we don't really talk about this way in our mentoring conversation, right, is that you are in the gift, you are experiencing a deep interwovenness with the universe, with that person and the universe, because you are less attached, because you are cultivating generosity, even if you didn't know that's what you were doing. Even if you didn't know that's what you were doing. Now, this is why I think church is so important, right? At its best, church and other worship communities seek to be countercultural by finding ways to help us cultivate and perfect generosity. Now, actually, here's a perfect moment. There was a baby crying. How many of you were bothered? You don't have to raise your... Okay, there's a couple. You get a point for honesty. How do you think the parents felt? Uncomfortable. They want to be here, right? They know that people are probably bothered. This is the dynamic that we're in. We're a living community. Hear that, embrace it, find generosity, be like, you're welcome here. Ian's words are transitory and ephemeral and not that meaningful. More meaningful is that we are here for everyone. That everyone is welcome. Ian's words are garbage. Get rid of them, truly. Attachment to words, ugh. Generosity, way more important. Truly. When a church is missional in its focus, it's not thinking about bringing members in or finding leaders. It is thinking only about how can we create opportunities to help others become more generous, more ethical, more patient. How can we cultivate more wisdom? How do we become a wisdom school? The teachings of Buddhism and the teachings of Unitarian Universalism are both leading us to the spiritual awakening that fundamentally we are part of a whole. The whole world is supporting and sustaining us. That we live within a gift. We live within a gift that is so profound we can never repay it. Right? Charles Eisenstein, who I adore, captured this wisdom when he said, we didn't earn, you're going to hear this again from me because I love it so much. We didn't earn any of the things that really keep us alive or make life good. We didn't earn the air. We didn't earn being born. We didn't earn our conception. We didn't earn being able to breathe. We didn't earn having a planet that can provide food. We didn't earn the sun. I don't care how hard you worked at your job. You didn't earn the sun. So I think and he continues, so I think on some level, people have this inborn gratitude because on some level, we know we didn't earn anything. Not anything that really keeps us alive, right? We know that life is a gift. If you know that you've received a gift, then the natural response is gratitude and the desire to give in return. I love that quote. When we awaken to this realization, we are overcome with gratitude. The natural response of a grateful person is generosity. So by this point in the sermon, you've probably realized that the Buddhists have 4 levels of generosity. Right? I love them. God, they are so nuanced. And there are 4 aspects of this first paramita. The 4 levels are: 1, being generous with our material possessions; 2, being generous with our words; 3, being generous with our thoughts; 4, being generous with our time. Right? Now, each of these 4 aspects of generosity has a contrasting hindrance that reinforces our self-centeredness or selfishness. But it does not take a skilled practitioner to realize that the less generous we are with our material possessions, our words, our thoughts, and our time, what we're actually doing is reinforcing our self-centeredness and selfishness. We already know this to be true. In 2013, Daniel Goleman, who many of you know because he wrote this best-selling book called Emotional Intelligence, but he wrote an article in the New York Times called "Rich People Just Care Less," which is a great title because you want to read it. But what he does is he explores how money provides the luxury to focus on ourselves because we don't need to rely on others as much. Rather than creating and cultivating relationships based on an interwoven reality, being wealthy allows people to purchase services they need, which detrimentally impact society. Goleman writes, "People with the most social power pay scant attention to those with little such power," which is not surprising, we might think. But he goes on to add that the prerequisite to empathy is simply paying attention to the person in pain. And the more powerful were less compassionate towards the hardships described by the less powerful. Further, the financial difference ends up creating a behavioral difference. Poor people are better attuned to interpersonal relations with those of the same strata and the more powerful than the rich are because they have to be. They have to be. And finally, Goleman concludes, this has a profound implication on societal behavior and governmental policy. Tuning in to the needs and feelings of another person is a prerequisite to empathy, which in turn can lead to understanding, concern, and if the circumstances are right, compassionate action. The point, really, of his article was to highlight that the lack of compassionate action in our society, and particularly in our political sphere, which have just spiraled in the last 10 years since he wrote this article, where we see every political agreement, it just seems to require a cut in food stamps or health benefits or education. It's because there seems to be very little empathy for those among us who are suffering. And he's not saying being poor is good. That's not what he's saying, right? It's just what he's saying is to survive, poor people need to be more generous with one another, which leads them to being more compassionate and understanding of other people's circumstances. And he's not saying that being wealthy is bad. It's just that it provides an environment that allows people to avoid interdependent living, right? We can just buy our way out of relationships. I don't like this choir, I'm going to buy a new choir. There are churches with paid choirs. And they get, not here, but other places. And if Mark doesn't like how one of those people is singing, he fires them. Not here, right? Here, they work together in a different way. And it's a different choir because of that. I'm just going to leave that giggle by itself. Ironically, right, the derivative comment is that wealthy people actually suffer on a spiritual level because material comfort can isolate and reinforce a sense of separation instead of interwovenness. So it just means being wealthy, it means we have to practice more, honestly. Now, of course, this focuses on the material generosity, and the Buddhists point out that material generosity is the easiest of the forms to cultivate, right? It's the first on the list. You can round up your bill at the supermarket by donating a few cents, and cumulatively, it probably has a big effect. And it probably has an effect on you, in a way. And it's also a way to be like, oh, I give. Right? I'm generous. More difficult than giving money, though, is being generous with your words. Oh, Sue. Like saying nice things. Harder than just like paying your way out. Harder than that, generous of thought. Because we all know people who say nice words and, we know how it goes, right? And when it really happens, right, when we're not careful, when we're not generous of thought, but we're generous of words, it comes out as passive aggression, right? Our words reveal what our thoughts really are, which are not kind. This was me this morning. What is he doing? Oh, what is he doing? Accusation to curiosity changed my whole morning. Beyond generosity of thought is generosity of time, which is often interpreted as people who pass along wisdom freely, right? We all know people who give thoughts, words, and time in hopes of getting something. And they hide behind words of generosity, but really what they're trying to do is enforce a worldview on others. Generous words inspire and encourage us to believe in others and in ourselves. Generous thoughts are not just thinking well of another, but actively engaging in the cultivation of a generous mind. Generous of time is the willingness to sit with others through difficulty. And the Buddhists have this special quality to it, which they call sharing the Dharma, which is like the teaching, right? We would call it, inviting someone to church, maybe. And many people feel really uncomfortable inviting someone to church. And I think one of the reasons is because it feels like we're trying to get somebody, like, oh, I want somebody to come to my church, so my church is bigger and better. But that's not what they're talking about, right? Being generous with time happens to be, oh, you're suffering. I belong to this community, and it has helped me change my life. I now, it's tough. Holy smokes, there are potatoes that bounce together a lot. But in doing so, I am becoming a better person. If you would like to come, I would love for you to come, and I will sit with you. I'll introduce you to some friends. I want you to be happy. That's a different type of invitation. The world is lonely and isolating, and our culture is driving us to hoard and be fearful, and it's unhealthy. But coming to church, where we bump together like potatoes, we are slowly cleaning ourselves in our hope to cultivate willingness, gratitude, generosity, agency, and hope, so that we can transform our lives and our culture. Now, I referenced the choir, and actually, I think one of the reasons the choir is so meaningful as a part of church life, right, is because, yeah, it's fun for them to sing. They get to sing, they get to stand up here, everybody sees you, everybody applaud, like, that's fun, right? But what they're really doing, and they may not even know they're doing this, what they're really doing is giving you the gift of spiritual music which helps your journey. Now, they may know that, but if they don't, that's what you're doing, by the way, right? You are helping them along their path. And it helps them experience a greater sense of openness in their lives because they are practicing being very generous. They are here every Wednesday night listening to Mark go, nope, here's the punch. And, it takes a certain, humbleness and willingness to be prodded so that they can give you the gift that you need. That's why yes, they sing and it's lovely, but that's why they do it. So that you can grow and be free and be liberated. Truly. And it's an amazing thing because this rarely happens out in the world. Where do you get to come and be a part of a group that is just designed to give you a gift, give others a gift? That doesn't happen in other parts of our world, right? It may seem counterintuitive, but this is also why serving on a committee is good. Now, let's be honest about ourselves right now at MVUC. Committee work right now is hard. COVID really wreaked havoc, right? There's some committees with like one person on them, right? And so they're like struggling to do this work so that something doesn't fall apart. It's hard. And we're going to be working on this next year. There's just too much change going on this year. We're going to work on the volunteer structure next year. But when there's a volunteer culture, which is what a church is designed to do, is help you understand a volunteer and living within a gift, then being part of committees is actually incredibly rewarding because you are part of something, not its own isolated thing. You are part of a whole that is there, that exists, because someone is walking in off the street and they are lonely and they are lost, and guess what? They just got caught and held by somebody, which is this church. Seems weird, like, because committee work can be so hard. But what we're doing is we're creating a space that where we can catch people who are lost and lonely and hold them and tell them, it's okay, we got you. When we encounter the paramita of dana, when we realize what generosity really means, we discover that the giver experiences profound happiness, not because they gave out of duty, but because they experience the joy of helping others. There is no other purpose to a church than to provide you the opportunity to experience the joy of helping others, because it's that opportunity that frees you from suffering. So please, receive the gifts that are being offered by those in the church. Be the nun with the begging bowl. You are helping these people. Accept the gift. But also, seek out the outstretched hands, the outstretched bowls, and allow these people to help you. And together, we will shed our selfishness and awaken to our interdependence. Amen. Please join in singing our next hymn. It is number 95. There's more love somewhere. Please join me in the extinguishing of the chalice. It's found in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. We carry it in our hearts until we meet together again. Source of life, God, my darling, inspire us to go inward in the season of Advent, to welcome the darkness, to germinate in us like a seed beneath the soil, growing towards the light. Awaken us to that profound sense of interwovenness beyond name, beyond fence, beyond party, beyond affiliation, beyond anything that creates separation, allowing us to rest in presence. And fill us with grace, the grace that allows us to compost accusation into curiosity, that allows us to cultivate generosity where we once had selfishness, so that we might be part of a world of change. Amen. Before we close, just a quick moment of gratitude for those who have generously given so much. We have Doug Masterson, Tom Ruby, Raleigh Romaine over here, bringing us out to the world. We have Jake Bornazian on the tenor saxophone, Barry Finkelstein on upright bass, Tom Griffin on guitar, Nick Marin on chromatic harp, and Joey Antico. Yeah. Linda Davidson was our worship associate. Nardos Desta was our lay minister. Linda Doyle sang a solo. Yeah. And the choir who blessed us. Thank you so much. The service has ended, but we've got one more number from the jazz. And I forgot I had one more thank you. The star of the morning, baby Veronica. Truly, because it gave us all the opportunity to practice in real time. Truly. Thank you, baby Veronica.